Well, good morning, PV, or whatever time it is that you're watching this. I am here with one of my spiritual mentors and best friends, Brother Randy Harris, who, Randy, you are an Arkansan. Are you missing Arkansas during the quarantine?
Well, it looks like you've got a better office than I do in Arkansas.
That's true. That's true. Outside of there being like a ton of tornadoes
Yeah.
right now, too.
Well, I grew up in Bentonville. I consider Bentonville my home. My brother still lives there, so I have an Arkansas Razorback sweatshirt, so I'm good.
Yeah, yeah. We and technically we're basically national champions because I think we're the ones who won the last playoff game in college basketball. So doesn't that it
Sure.
feels good. It feels good.
Yeah, yeah. Whatever floats your boat on that.
26 years later, we're back on top. So, Brother Andy, when the whole world is in a crisis and people are responding to that in different ways. I've talked to a lot of friends and PV members who are struggling with different rounds or different kinds of anxiety about this. What about the future? What about my job? What about my marriage? What about my kids' jobs? Uh, I I wanted to keep working. I wanted to stop working. You know, the there's all kinds of different things that are uh, facing us today, and a lot of anxiety about it. And I'm asking you this because you were my spiritual director for the 8 years I was in Abilene, and you saw me go through a lot of different kinds of anxiety. And somewhere along the way, you talked me into doing something that is very much against my nature or personality, which was silent prayer, praying without words. And it's been very helpful for me through the years. And I was wondering, since this is a season where a lot of people are dealing with anxiety, what would be the way, how would you kind of give people an introduction to a different way of praying?
Yeah. So anxiety is a function of our finiteness. So we are created beings, which means we have limitations and we cannot effectively control the things around us. And there are two kinds of human beings, the ones who admit they're control freaks and the ones who don't.
Mm.
But not being able to control the things around us makes us anxious. In Genesis chapter 3, that's described as wanting to be God,
Mm.
where you want to trust in your ability to create your own security rather than trust in God. So at a time like this, I think anxiety is always there, but at a time like this, it gets ramped up because it becomes clear to us how much we can't control, how much of it is out of our hands. Okay, so there are some ways of praying that actually look like more attempts for human beings to try to control things.
Mm.
You know, we try to make God a cosmic vending machine, and if we push the right buttons, then He'll give us what we need or want. But the kind of prayer that you and I were trying to learn to practice is kind of the prayer of presence. Klaus Isler describes it by the term "wasting time with God," which is a really nice term. When you think about some of the best times you've spent with people you love, your spouse, your children, your family. Some of the best times you've spent is when you weren't trying to accomplish anything together. You were just hanging out. You were just being there. You were just enjoying each other's company. And wasting time with God is a way of doing that. And say, okay, God, I don't have any expectations. I don't have any demands. I don't have an agenda. I'm just going to be here and hang out with the one I love. Now, that does a couple of things. First of all, it's like, let's say you decide you're going to do that 15 minutes a day. Let's just be modest. Okay, 15 minutes a day. It is like a 15-minute vacation every day. It'll probably be the only time all day when there are no expectations or demands or agenda.
Yeah.
It's that point where you release your grip and say, okay, for 15 minutes, I'm giving up trying to be king of the world. I'm giving up trying to control. I'm just going to hang out here with the one I love. So the worst thing at this point is for that to become a burden. It's not a burden. It's a way you kind of get released from your burdens. And it's also a confession that because you're shutting up and you're not trying to control the conversation, that it's the way we confess we're in over our heads. And sometimes there's really nothing to say. All we can do is sit in companionable silence and say, oh, okay, God, I'm gonna trust the world to you. I'll do my part. I'll do what you call me to do, but I realize I'm in over my head. So that's why I think in a time like this, that kind of praying can help address the anxiety. Now, it doesn't if you start worrying about doing it right and doing it right, and I'm distracted, and all of a sudden it becomes another source of anxiety rather than that we offload anxiety.
So just if somebody grew up and the main source of prayer was acts, adoration, confession, thanksgiving, supplication, somebody like me. So one of the things that was the hardest for me when I first started that, and I still struggle with this, is what you call monkey mind.
Sure.
What do you how would you describe, I guess what I'm looking for is armchair mystic, kind of the 101 stuff. How do you deal with, your brain, as soon as you try to not, to think about nothing but being with God, your brain is going to think of 1,000 different things.
Right.
Right. How do you manage that?
Yeah, and that's also going to be true 30 years from now. So, so okay, it's kind of got to get over our notion. Okay, we're going to get perfect at that. We can get better at it. Okay, so the first thing is we have to get our bodies still, and that's not real easy for a lot of people. And if you're cooped up together now with a lot of other people, you almost have to, you have to develop a family plan. Okay, so I'm going to go in this place and I'm going to get my body quiet. And you want to be in a posture that is alert but not painful. You don't particularly want to lay down and do this because that leads to sleep, and sleep's not a bad idea, but that's not kind of what we're after here. And then but it's easier. And one of the best ways to still the body is obviously pay attention to your breathing. That's been around for thousands of years. You concentrate on your breathing. But sure, everybody when they try to get quiet is going to be distracted. There's going to be a lot of things piling in. So I think the best way to describe that is the mind is like a greedy child. You take away all its toys, and what it does is it starts screaming. So what we're going to do is we're going to give the mind one toy, but we're going to choose what toy it is. So you're going to choose a phrase or an image or a word that is going to help bring you back to center when you find your mind is wandering. So, one of the classic ones in Christian history is Lord Jesus Christ, be merciful to me, a sinner. But it can be as simple as the kingdom of God is here, or breathe Holy Spirit. It's just going to be some word or phrase that when you find your mind wandering, you're going to use that phrase to bring it back. And when you find your mind has wandered onto other things, you're not going to say, "Oh, I can't," you're not going to get all
Right.
excited about that. You're just going to. It's like watching those things on a barge drift by. Oh, okay, I'm going to let that go. I'm going to use my word or phrase to bring myself back to center and paying attention to God. And this is not trying to enter an altered state of consciousness. As
Right.
Christians, we believe in God. We believe that there's a God who's as close to us as our own breath. And
Hmm.
we're just trying to pay attention to the reality of God that's all around us and be attentive to that. So it's not about putting yourself into a trance. It's about attentiveness to the divine.
One of the things that you did that helped convince me of this was your bit on the drums of Baal and Habakkuk. You know what I'm talking about?
Sure.
Can you do the elevator pitch of that?
Yeah, I think in Habakkuk chapter 2, right at the end, Habakkuk says, when you worship an idol, what you do is you say, "Speak to me, wake up, give me knowledge." And so the picture is that when you that when you worship an idol, you're going to do all the talking because the idol is going to do nothing.
Right.
So all the energy, all the noise is going to be human generated. And then he comes to the last verse, which those of us in Churches of Christ know because we made a song out of it, where it says, "But the Lord, Yahweh, is in his holy temple. Let all the earth be silent before him." So as opposed to worshiping an idol, when you worship a God, he's actually alive. He's at home. He might have something to say.
Yeah.
And the first act of worship is to be silent because we're not worshiping an idol. We're worshiping a living God.
I love it. I love it. And in my experience, there's something you bump into by being silent before God. At in Abilene, at one point, there was a season I had of depression, and you know this story, Brother Randy. But it took me a little bit to realize, man, I've just been in a funk lately. And then I Googled the symptoms for depression, and sure enough, it was like just checking one off a list at a time. And my first thought after that was, this is what I've been practicing for. And it started to become much more manageable because of this kind of, and I am not very good at this, as you can attest to, Brother Randy, but I have done this for years now because of you. And it's not an overnight fix, but it is something. And, God does show up. I mean,
Right.
there's a lot of different ways through the years that I can bear witness to something happened in my life and in my heart through this kind of prayer. The previous preacher, Chuck Monan, he had a contemplative life as well, and would take people to monasteries and stuff. But now everybody's kind of in a monastery,
Mm.
and hopefully this has been a good resource. Do you have any like beginner books or anything for people who would like to chase this a little further that you recommend?
Well, I do think the one you mentioned earlier by Thibodeau, that's spelled in the Cajun way, Armchair Mystic, is a really good entry point. Um, he is a Jesuit priest, but the whole notion of armchair mystic is you don't have to go to the desert with monks in order to learn to do this. You can do it while you're in a recliner, and that's good news, right?
Yeah.
A lot of people find a good entry point in Henry Nouwen's tiny little book, The Way of the Heart.
Mm.
Lovely little book on silence and solitude and prayer. And the great thing about that little book, in addition to the fact that you can read it in an hour and a half or 2 hours, is it makes you want to.
Uh,
When you read that book, you think, oh, okay, whatever that is, I want
yeah.
it. So it's kind of this encouragement towards. So, and there are some obviously books that go deeper, but those are, I think, great entry points for people. And I always have to keep emphasizing that, kind of when you start down this road, don't grade yourself. Just don't give yourself a grade. Just just keep practicing, and nothing has to happen. You don't have to manufacture an experience. It's nothing like that.
Do one of the things you taught me is, and I've used this with so many other people that I feel like I can start claiming it as my own now. But it's not the thing that happens; it's the story that you lay on top of it.
Yeah.
And one of the things that contemplative prayer seems to give you just a little bit of margin to do is realize there's a difference between those two things. Is that fair to say?
Yeah. I mean, this is a complicated matter, right? So generally, the past events that keep wrecking our lives or torquing our lives, it's not the events, it is the videotape we've made that we keep replaying and replaying and replaying, and then the event becomes something even bigger and more pernicious in our life. And I do think that contemplation allows us to sort of be released from some of those movies that we're playing in our head, and that's not an overnight fix. But the one thing that all the Christian mystics and spiritual masters, men and women, say through the centuries is, when you engage in contemplation, what you find out is God is love. Yeah, really? That's yep. That goes from your head to your heart. And when you discover that God is love, some of those tapes that you're playing in your head get reordered.
I love it. Well, Brother Randy, I know it's got to be thrilling to be able to say, Jonathan is the work of my this spiritual master that I've unleashed on Little Rock.
There you go. It's a culmination of my life's work. The crowning achievement of my career.
Oh, not at all. Hey,
I always tell people, people come to me on stuff like this, and I said, I didn't make any of this up. I'm stealing from 2,000 years of the
right
tradition, and so.
What I love about you is that you are, deeply committed to our particular fellowship, but also you know the broader Christian tradition, and you're quirky enough that people will listen to you tell them about it. So,
well, I mean, it's easy to point out. Yeah, I mean, it's easy to point out the bad stuff in the 2,000 years of Christian history, and I don't make any attempt to deny that. But there's also a lot of good stuff there, and there's a lot of wisdom there, and there's a lot of people who are deeply seeking God who shared what they found, and I want to take advantage of all that. I always tell people I'm not interested in becoming a Catholic. I can't quite do Mary or the Pope, but there's some folks there that have taught me some things about prayer that I'm grateful for.
Yeah, I agree. Well, and I love G.K. Chesterton, as you know.
Yeah,
all right.
Have you read the mystery that G.K. Chesterton wrote? I didn't realize there was one, but it's on the list of the 100 greatest crime novels of all time.
Father Brown stuff?
I guess.
No, yeah. I mean, Father Brown or Man Alive.
I don't remember what it was. I just saw the name there. So
he's written so much.
Yeah.
I made Eden read Father Brown, and she was appalled that I would ask an 11-year-old to read it, because it's apparently a lot more bloody and gruesome than I remember. So anyway, well, thank you for your time, Brother Randy. Yep. I'm gonna. You have any parting words for PV?
Yeah. Well, I think the James Bryan Smith's words are really helpful here. The kingdom of God is never in trouble. And the kingdom of God is not in trouble now. Our current nation may be in trouble. We may be in trouble. The kingdom of God is not in trouble. It's never in trouble.
Yeah, that's good. All right. Thanks, Brother Randy.
Good to see you.